I guess I'll see you in the movies.
See you in the movies.
You already got a birthday message.
Oh, thank you, Nacho.
Okay, so welcome to another episode of Chicken on Stick, where we talk about usually a movie we saw last night and review it and tell you if you should go see it this weekend. This is a unique but special episode in that a couple things. One, it's somebody's birthday. She doesn't look too happy about it. She's only turning 21.
That's it. That's all it is.
And then also we saw two movies. One Wednesday night, which is Clerks 3, and then last night on Thursday, which is Pearl, both of which we're going to talk about. But before we jump into that, because it is somebody's birthday, she got presents that she gets to go through and open.
I can finally legally drink.
She can finally legally drink after all these years.
After all these years, it's about
So
time.
first she should just do these because I just repackaged. I repackaged them.
Max, what is that? You want to smell?
So she got a couple things, which are hilariously all movie related in some way.
They are, actually. I got this cute little hanging sign from the movie Hocus Pocus that says, "Gather around sisters, witches welcome," and it's got a little black cat on it too.
Because she loves Hocus Pocus and also she's really into witchy shit.
Yeah. So I was very excited about that, and I immediately put it in the kitchen. And I'm very, very excited for the Hocus Pocus 2 movie that's coming out in 2 weeks, I think.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And we were talking about I Am Legend, and
we watched the 1964 adaptation, The Last Man on Earth, with Vincent Price recently. And every time we've talked about I Am Legend, she always mentions wanting to read the book.
I have always wanted to read the book, so now I officially...
Now she has the book.
I officially have the book, so thank you for that. I'm going to read it.
Although she says she didn't like that it mentions Will Smith on the cover.
Yeah, I don't... It literally just says, "Now a major motion picture starring Will Smith."
Okay.
It's still a good movie, though.
Now on to the other things. Oh, did you do Today's Framed?
No.
You got to do Today's Framed. Also. Well, after this, she'll do Today's Framed.
But
Thank you for reminding me of that. She's usually the one who asks me, and now
What
the
is
roles
it?
have reversed, where I do it, and then I have to ask her. Go, take him.
Oh my goodness.
She has about 30... Actually, I take that back. She's got, like, five or six Chris Pratt pop figures, and now she's got another one.
I didn't know that there was a second Owen Grady.
That's like your fourth Owen Grady, because he's got at least one for each movie.
He's got a
So
little
this is for
mustache.
Dominion.
I love it.
She's basically gonna have the whole collection of Chris Pratt pop figures by the end
Yeah,
of this.
it's like, it's
We
right
got-
there. It's a shrine.
Star-Lord over there, two other Owen Gradys, now a third one, and two Andy Dwyers, although there's like three more Andy Dwyers. There might even be more of him. I don't know. There's not on here. The other one I saw was Sam Neill.
There was a Sam Neill
There
one?
was Dr. Grant, and I almost got it.
There's a Dr.
Because
Ian Malcolm.
you think Dr. Grant's sexy.
He is sexy.
Yeah.
Always has been. Thank you. If Chris Pratt ever walks into this apartment and sees my creepy
He's gonna
little
be
shrine, he's
terrified.
gonna be terrified of me.
Yeah.
What do
And
we
then one last thing, I think. I don't remember. I think that's probably it.
Oh my goodness. A Hocus Pocus t-shirt?
So you can wear it on
Oh
your
my
Hocus Pocus
God.
date on the 30th.
That's so cute. It's got the little witches on them and the little black cat on the back. I'm wearing my Hocus Pocus
And
pants.
she's wearing Hocus Pocus pants, which that's completely coincidental but hilarious.
I love it. I love like the cartoony little
She
take on
also
it.
bought a hoodie that says Hocus Pocus on it recently too,
I did.
which now she's literally got a whole like wardrobe of Hocus Pocus.
Look, the little ghost is exactly like this one. He looks exactly the same.
Yeah, because this is a Hocus Pocus thing.
I know. Thank you. I love it. I'm very excited to have an entire Hocus Pocus wardrobe.
Yeah.
Which I will wear year-round, not only during October.
That's fine. They're clothes. That's what you're supposed to wear them.
Okay,
not. I didn't take the tag off. Oh well. Now you know that it was $30. Maybe. I don't even know. Maybe there's a discount or something.
Thank you very, very much. I love everything. I'm very excited. Very, very.
Now you have to do framed.
Now I have to do.
You have to do framed.
Okay, let's see.
Nacho and I both got it in 1.
Oh, really now?
Somebody else, I think, got it in 6. I feel pretty confident that you'll get it in the first 3.
Well, now there's a lot of pressure.
I'm pretty sure you'll get it in the first 3. If not on 1. If you don't get it on 1, I mean, no big deal. Because the first frame is very much there to throw people off.
So they're being sneaky.
Nacho, I never look past whichever image I get it on. I never look past that image. So when whoever it was that got it on 6, I went back to look at the other images. And it's like, really? I mean, I guess if you just do not know the movie at all.
Ha! Got it.
On 1?
Yep.
There you go.
They really did try to. I was
You
about to
gotta
be
show
like.
your proof. Yeah, pink. Yeah. There you go. She got it on 1.
Got it on 1. Nailed it. Good timing.
it's hilarious timing.
Woo woo. Yeah,
you know
I'm part of the
I didn't tell you. I don't think I told you the story. All right, maybe I did. When I bought that book, when I went to the Barnes and Noble to try and find it, because I looked it up and they said they had it, and I was like, okay, I'll go in, I'll find it on my lunch break, no big deal. For like 20 minutes, I'm walking in circles around this place, trying to figure out where the hell this thing could possibly be. All of their shelves, I do not understand at all how any of these things are assorted, because they don't seem to be assorted by author name. They don't seem to be assorted by book title name. I'm sure it's like the decimal system, whatever, something else that I just don't know, so it doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm going through shelf after shelf out of shelf. I go to fiction. I go through everything on fiction. I go through everything on, like... I looked up online what it's considered, and I saw places where it's marked as like science fiction / fantasy. So I go through all science fiction, fantasy. I go through horror. Their horror section's like 2 cases. I legitimately cannot find this thing anywhere. I asked the lady. She goes, oh yeah, Matheson or whatever the guy's last name is. Walks straight over to it, plucks it just right off the shelf.
Out of the shelf.
No issues at all. Just like as if she just put them out that day or something, knows perfectly where they are without even thinking about it. But as soon as she does, she starts to go, oh, I didn't really like the movie. And I was like, I didn't think we were going to have this conversation. I was like,
but
yeah, I know that it's different from like the Will Smith one. I'm assuming it's much, from what I've read, much closer to the 1964 one or whatever. And then she just goes on this like tangent about the book, as if I've read the book, because she's just telling me things straight out of the book. And I was like, sure.
Big fan.
I was like, right, cool. Also, I don't plan on reading this, but okay.
Well, I'm excited to read it. I'm very, very jazzed. And it doesn't seem to be like that big of an intimidating book or anything.
It's not. It's like 160 pages.
Yeah, easy read.
It's very short. And
so
then
you
a
could
bunch
read
of other
it.
stories. I mean, I could, but there's no pictures, so... If it doesn't have pictures, I don't want to read it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the birthday presents. I love them.
Okay, birthday party's over. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're old now.
Yeah.
So what movie do you want to do first?
I say go in order.
In order that... Okay, so...
Yeah.
Both, coincidentally, alphabetically, for both the names of the movies and the directors, and also the order in which we saw them.
Easy enough. I need to get my glasses because my eyes are watering.
Oh my god. Okay. Hurry up. I'll talk about Clerks while you're gone. So the first movie we're going to talk about is going to be Clerks 3. Kevin Smith's latest movie. Obviously the third in a trilogy of films starting with Clerks from 1992 92 or so, 93, something like that. And it follows the same characters that Clerks has always followed, the main two being Dante Hicks, played by Brian O'Halloran, and then Randall Graves, played by Jeff Anderson. Frequent collaborators and personal friends with Kevin Smith. Includes all of the sort of people you get used to in the Clerks series. Jay and Silent Bob are there. Elias from Clerks 2, who was the kid that worked with them at movies. Other staples of like Kevin Smith things kind of pop up everywhere. The comic book men who run the Secret Stash all show up at some point. Basically, everybody who's ever worked with Kevin Smith at some point or another, or at least liked to work with him, shows up in this. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of like random surprise little cameos are in there, which are kind of fun. Always like spot out who people are, things like that. In Clerks 3, it's like 14 years after Clerks 2 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Which Clerks 2 was also like 14 years or 12 years after Clerks 1, which is interesting. We got a little snippet right before the movie. There are no previews because it's a Fathom event, so you just go right in and basically the movie starts. But there's a little snippet of Kevin right before the movie, which I think the reboot maybe had this too. Although we went on the road show, so I think he might have just said something right before the movie. Doesn't matter. Anyway, he has like a little thing where he just filmed talking about like, hey, I was only able to make this movie because all of you went and like saw in the DVD sales for Jay and Silent Bob reboot did so well that they gave me some money to make this, which is always cool to see. I don't, regardless of if you actually think Kevin Smith films are like good or not, or they're up your alley or whatever it might be. I think he's probably one of the most like genuine people in the film industry, period.
So genuine.
He's also like extremely passionate, and I'm
humble.
Always happy that after he did Cop Out and a couple other films, he kind of lost his like passion for it for a while, until the episode of the podcast where they found the story that inspired Tusk, and then he decided to do Tusk, and all that sort of stuff kind of revitalized everything. And his last handful of movies have all been movies that you could definitely say are just passion projects, because there's a bunch of them where he specifically just made them for, first off, the audience is going to want to see him, and then something like Yoga Hosers he did like to give his daughter something, and blah, 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 whatever. So Clerks 3 is a lot of that. It's definitely, it's a third in the series, and then it also, because it's part of the larger View Askew universe that he's been doing forever, including the Jay and Silent Bob movies, Dogma, like everything that's basically most of his movies, basically. There's a lot of small things and jokes and references in this that if you've not seen those other ones, or maybe you don't even really remember the other ones very well, that might go over your head. I know there's a couple things in this film that were callbacks or references that she was like, they keep saying that, I don't understand. And I was like, well, it's from the original Clerks, or like, she sucked 37 dicks. So it does reward fans, I guess, or if you've watched the movies numerous times or seen them or remember that kind of stuff pretty well, it kind of definitely rewards that. This movie, Kevin has gone on record of saying that this is the conclusion to the trilogy or the storyline, basically, and it definitely is that, which does in turn make it sort of definitely the most, and I've seen a lot of people say this, like the most emotional, the most
sentimental.
I guess sentimental is a way to say it. Like kind of like the most personal film, because Jay and Silent Bob reboot does have that moment where there's like this father-daughter dynamic throughout the film that kind of has a big like emotional conclusion to it. With a couple things, it definitely seems like, came from like a personal place with Kevin Smith and his daughter now being an adult and trying her own career and all that sort of stuff. This one is much more. Ever since Kevin had his heart attack in 2018, late 2018, mid 2018, whenever that was, 2019, maybe 2018, something like that. It definitely shows that was a big part of the story that he wanted to tell with this one, is that sort of like a midlife crisis, surviving a heart attack sort of situation. Because like the story is about Randall Graves, one of the main characters, having a heart attack, similar to Kevin Smith, and then deciding that he wants to make a movie based on his life, which is what more or less the original Clerks was Kevin worked at the Quick Stop during the day and then shot Clerks at night in the store that he worked at, and that's partially why it's in black and white and stuff, is because that way you didn't really know if it was daytime, nighttime, whatever it was. So it's kind of, really the story's more or less kind of come full circle, because 2, definitely was away from maybe something that he personally knew, like he did with Clerks, because now they're working in fast food and they're older and blah blah blah, whatever. And then this one kind of comes full circle, because now it's literally the most, I guess, meta film that he's done, because it is more or less like his story. Like, I've had a heart attack. Now I want to make these things that matter to me. I'm going to tell a story based on what I know about my life, which is what Randall decides to do. And then Dante kind of goes along with him because he's best friends. And then it goes from there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You got anything to say? Now that I've kind of like described in a very long-winded what the movie actually is.
It was definitely a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be going into it. But it was so nice to see these characters kind of coming to terms with some of like the newer age stuff, and like how they're, probably what, when they were kids, how people would be like, well, back in my day, blah, blah, blah. And now it's like you get things where people are talking about like cryptocurrency and things like that. And they're like, well, this stuff is like confusing and all of that. But it was really fun to see them kind of acclimating a little bit to the times. And yeah, all of the little cameos and the little tidbits that you get here and there were really, really fun. I laughed a lot. I cried a lot more than I thought that I would. And just like you said, I mean, I love everything that Kevin Smith does. He really is just an amazing person, and he is authentic, and he's humble, and he's down to earth, and he's one of the people in Hollywood who has never let anything change like who he is, like in a big, huge way. But I did also really enjoy pointing out that, because I like to follow him on Twitter, and I remember after he did have his heart attack that it was really important to him to start getting exercise and things like that. I think he said that he promised his daughter that he would. He
did, yeah.
That he would actually, start taking exercise seriously. So he started doing these, I think it's called...
And he became vegan.
She got him to turn vegan, and he started, I think it's called like Canyon Run or something in California. I can't remember. It's like some famous hike that people do. But I remember he was tweeting every day as motivation for himself. He'd take a picture once he got to the very top of whatever the canyon was. And he was doing it every day. And so he was getting super, super tan. And it's so funny because in this movie, it looks like he got a spray tan. But I know that's just from him hiking every day.
Just from being outside all the time.
And it's so funny because him next to Jason, my best friend.
Oh, yeah. And Jason Mewes. best friends.
Jason's like as pale as a ghost, and suddenly Kevin is just looks like he just got back from Hawaii. So I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah, I thought it was a really really good movie. Really exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, and it is especially in the first, maybe like 20 minutes of the film. Well, maybe even less than that. Kind of your standard run-of-the-mill comedy Kevin Smith movie where they're all like, there's dick jokes and nerd jokes and all sorts of stuff in there, and people, basically characters just kind of having verbal jabs back and forth.
Yeah.
And your standard sort of Kevin Smith, and it's very funny throughout. I mean, like most of them, some of the jokes will land, some of them won't. Your mileage will kind of vary there. I thought the cryptocurrency stuff was kind of funny in here. They do kind of like beat it over the head a lot.
Yeah, beat you with it.
And I've seen a lot of people not find that very funny,
yeah.
And it's probably because they're fools who also are into whatever. It doesn't matter anyway.
There
NFTs or whatever.
There are a lot of people, I think, that I read something where someone was like, I don't find it funny because they over exaggerate their facial expressions and some of their jokes are kind of like awkward, and it's like, but that's like, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
So that's something that if you didn't appreciate that the first time around, of course you're not going to now when they're all almost 50, but
yeah.
they still act the same way. So some people find it hokey, but I find it endearing.
But even if you do, I think the change to this movie that quite honestly probably makes this one of his best films that he's ever done is that it is rather vaudeville, and yeah, it is definitely
very
the way that they tell it. But this story, and it does kind of take a turn pretty early on, maybe about 30 minutes into the movie or so, is when Randall actually has a heart attack and kind of decides like he wants to do this big thing with his life because he spent all of his time in the video store. He's watched like every movie possible, so he thinks that he can make a film and he wants to make it based on his life, which he's basically just making the first Clerks. That's kind of the meta joke about it. But it gets very emotional and starts to hit these really emotional beats that are actually like surprisingly deep and very big moments for Randall and Dante, especially in telling their story or the conclusions to their stories and the things that they go through. And some of the like Brian O'Halloran definitely gets like a big sort of monologue-y kind of moment, a big emotional moment.
He gets a big spotlight moment.
It's sprinkled throughout to kind of build, and like quite literally people were walking into this film not even like 2 minutes after it started, but because there's no trailers they probably thought we can get here right at 7, we won't miss anything, not knowing that the Fathom events don't have the trailers or whatever. But it's very quick and something's revealed to you instantly that you blink and you miss it, that comes back later on and starts to be like a bigger presence in the story. And it's if you don't care about the characters, or if you didn't see Clerks 2 or kind of keep track between, or really remember the characters, it might not be emotional or hit you the same. But when the movie gets to its sort of peak and its climax and like the moments that are just like really really good and some of the best stuff he's ever done, it like I've heard many people say this, I'll say it too, it literally brought tears to my eyes. It is very moving. It is it gets very sad. It's
very existential.
Again, it very clearly comes from something that Kevin himself personally went through after his heart attack, realizing that like turns out life is fleeting, and if I don't do something, then who knows how long I've got left, and all this stuff. And it's there are like sad moments kind of sprinkled throughout, like little bits with the characters and stuff, which those parts didn't, there's like, yeah, that's kind of sad and I see where it's coming from, but it's quite literally the climax of the movie that
There's no way there was one person in that theater that didn't have tears in their
Again,
eyes.
I feel like if you with many things, if you don't have an attachment to the characters, or you don't feel some sort of empathy or whatever towards the characters while watching it, it might not do anything for you. Or if you quite literally just think of like Kevin Smith movies as like
Silly,
they're
hokey.
just funny, you don't really have to pay attention, you laugh
Stoner
every now and then,
movies.
whatever, then maybe that'll do it. But this, I mean, I was very surprised by how emotionally moving it actually is.
You say that it brought some tears to your eyes, and
Yeah.
I'll give it the benefit of the doubt that I have been a little bit emotionally compromised lately. But I was doing like that cry where like you're silent for a little bit and then you like so
Yeah.
I think the last movie I did that at was at Dominion. I think I cried pretty hard at that. But yeah, it'll get you. I heard a couple other people, doing the sniffles. So
Probably. And it's, I mean, I don't.
it takes you by surprise if you're going in there thinking that it's just your old school stoner movie.
I'll say, I mean, it is a fantastic conclusion to the Clerks storyline, or for the characters. I mean, it all, like, it's not really super left field. Things make sense. Thinking back about the movie and lines of dialogue that were said or things that were shown early on, I can build in my mind and be like, okay, there's all the foreshadowing. There's this. There's that. And it's just like it's super well done.
Very, very
and
well
I was
done.
very, very, very. I mean, I knew I was gonna enjoy it anyway because I said this before to people. I really enjoy most of Kevin's films. So I knew that I would most likely like it unless it was actually just like add 2 hours of a dumpster caught on fire and nothing else.
Yeah.
But I knew I was going to enjoy it, and it's it's one of those things people always be like, well, you're biased because you're a fan or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I am really a fan,
biased.
but none of his other movies have ever... I mean, the reboot, Jane Silent Bob reboot does have a moment in it that's kind of like moving and stuff towards the end, but this is on like a completely different level. This is something I would expect from, I don't know, like someone who's known for much more serious films, I guess. Not
Thank you,
necessarily
Deepak.
something from Kevin Smith, for example. So what do you think? Give us your final thoughts on the film and a rating.
I thought that it was fantastic. If you're a fan, you're going to love it, even if maybe you didn't follow them that closely. I think that you can still appreciate it for what it is, and for kind of a generation of people that are getting older, and our priorities are changing and things are different now. I give it an easy 10 out of 10 joints.
Wow. 10 out of 10 joints. Wow.
10 out of 10 joints.
Wow, I don't know how many movies you've given perfect ratings this
Very
year,
few.
but that's... Wow.
I thought about deducting like half a point because it made me cry that hard, but it deserved it.
There you go. She gives it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
I mostly agree. I don't 100% agree, but I will say, again, I think the comedy that you're used to with Kevin Smith movies are there. Trevor, who plays Elias, is super funny throughout this movie. With his character transitions,
so
and he gets some of the better quips and stuff, and it's really good.
Hail Satan!
Dante and Randall are as great as ever, and Jane and Silent Bob kind of take a sort of a step back. It feels like in this film, but they're still there, and they're still
they're still
the
themselves.
normal what you always get, with some funny aspects in there. I think, again, that the climax to this movie, the emotional weight that's put in it, and what Brian O'Halloran as Dante and Randall are able to do in this film together, and especially if you're a fan and Clerks and you know Clerks 2, or especially if you watched them recently before going to see this, that emotional moment is going to hit so much harder, and it's just so... It's so perfectly executed that it's hard to really, ding the movie too hard. But there are, some moments, again, that I think if you're not really a fan or you really don't know the movies, you're not going to pick up on a lot of this stuff because it is very heavy on, like, insider jokes. Like, you have to be in on the joke to kind of understand where it's going or what the references are, which makes it kind of hard. But, yeah, I still give it a 9 out of 10.
I knew you were like, I think I'm going to rate this higher than you.
I didn't think you'd give it a perfect rating because you didn't understand some of the jokes.
It didn't take away from it for me.
Sure.
Like, there are some things that that did go over my head just because it's been so long since I've seen the first movie.
I'll also say my score could maybe be a little impacted by the actual theater itself, because I don't know if whoever set up the projection didn't size it, like, aspect ratio correctly, or if the film is just shot that way. But it seemed like things were magnified too much because very frequently the tops of people's heads were cut off. So I couldn't tell if that was something the theater fucked up or if that's how it's shot. And if that's how it's shot, that is very annoying. But I have a feeling that it was the theater fucked it up, and, like, nobody, I don't know, like, previewed it to make sure things looked correct or something beforehand. So I'm not really factoring that in one way or the other, but if it is purposely shot that way, then I'm a very strong, like, I wouldn't move up at all, because it was very...
The music was really good, too, and very nostalgic, and a lot of that kind of hit me in the feels.
The music was very good.
Very good.
The music was very good. And
very well picked.
The very first song that plays is very informative to it's a film that I definitely 100% want to see again. To the point that I am almost tempted. I don't really want to go back to the Texas Theater because getting there, finding parking spaces, and then getting out was really annoying when we went last time. But I'm almost tempted for on November 13th when he's here to show it, of wanting to go to see it again. But 100% when it comes out, I'm buying it day one. I think this is 100% a go see if you're a fan. It's going to be a little bit more expensive because it's a Fathom event type thing, but if you're a big Kevin Smith fan, if you're a big Clerks fan, and you're, like, at all invested in the characters and story that's been told between the two previous movies leading into this one, you should definitely go see it. 100%. Now, on to the second movie we're going to talk about, which, not a sequel, but a prequel to a film that we both very much loved from earlier this year, the movie X, which is currently my number 3 movie of the year, which I did give a 10 out of 10 to. Which I think I don't know if you gave it a 10. You might have gave it a 9 because of eyeball stuff.
Yeah, I think I deducted an eyeball point. You always get it deducted a point for eyeballs.
But this movie, Pearl, is a prequel that tells the origin story for one of the killers in X, Pearl, played by Mia Goth. And this film was shot in secret alongside of X. And in theater, we didn't know this, so we left. We didn't get to see it in theater, so we had to look it up on YouTube after. But in theater, if you stayed after the credits of X when it was playing, you got the trailer for Pearl saying it was coming later in the year.
Which isn't that kind of a risky thing to do?
Totally.
When you're a filmmaker?
Oh, completely.
I mean, outside of, like, what's his face, who did Lord of the Rings, like, he knew that he was
Yeah, but that was a known thing. This one is definitely...
That's a big risk.
I'm sure there's a little bit more to it, but I wonder if maybe, if A24 or whatever other production companies were seeing the dailies and were so happy with X that they were like, oh, 100%. Or whatever the budget was for X, Ty West and them very cleverly, and maybe even Kid Cudi could have put in his own money. I don't fucking know, because he did get a special thank you in the credits for Pearl. That they somehow just very wisely shot these films like alongside with the budget of one movie, or they had a much larger budget and they split it into two.
You should.
It was whatever they did. It was very clever in the way they did it. Now, the movie X takes place in 1979. It's very clearly inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It deals sort of around the time of, I guess, the porn revolution, like going into home media, things like that, at the start of the 80s or something. Pearl, because it's a prequel, takes us way back in time to 1918. 61 years before. And we get a young Pearl who, I don't think they ever give her an age, but she must be like 20-ish, maybe even
I think
late,
younger than that.
Maybe 19, 18, 19. Because
she's already married in the movie, and I know back then they married super, super young.
Sure.
I was thinking like 17, 18.
Well, Howard, her husband, is currently in World War I. He's enlisted. I would assume you had to have probably been at least 17 to go into war, if not 18. So hard to say. She's definitely at least early 20s, for sure. Pearl is such an interesting movie.
Very.
In that it is so vastly different in tone and execution from X that it's almost to the point of where you could watch these movies completely independent from each other and have no idea that they were even supposed to be related. Right. But Pearl does rely on quite a bit that you have seen X, because there's a lot of dialogue and not necessarily overt nods, but dialogue and references and things that tie it back so clearly to X that without seeing X, I don't think you could fully appreciate Pearl to begin with. So, unlike some movies, let's say Star Wars, for example, where 4, 5, and 6 were first, then 1, 2, and 3 came out, that there's different like ideas in the ways you could watch them. You can watch Star Wars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But then you could also watch it 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, or you could watch it in like a different version where you watch episode 4 and 5, and then you go back to 1, 2, and 3 because now you know Vader's the father, and then you learn that story. So you could watch it in like you could watch it in so many different like variations. With X and Pearl, I would never suggest ever watching it Pearl and then X, because I just think you get so much more out of Pearl for having seen X first. And we watched X Wednesday night as well, just before this, so it is fresh on my mind too. Interestingly enough, because I'm pretty sure X, the only credits in X for writing are Ty West. So X is directed and wrote by Ty West and produced by him and a couple other people as well. Starring Mia Goth and then some other people, Jenna Ortega and some other people. Pearl is an interesting one. And this is, again, I'm sure there's like a fascinating story that maybe I could look up now or would have to watch like some sort of commentary or something later on. Because while Ty West still directs this, and he is a writer for Pearl, it is co-written by Mia Goth, who's playing the central character. So I'm wondering if it's just like when Mia Goth was doing Pearl and Maxine in X, playing the dual roles, if the producers or maybe just Ty himself realized that they really had something there with her, and then it sprung from that, and because she plays the character Pearl, that maybe her writing credit isn't so much like necessarily dialogue or like plotting or whatever, but like from the character element. Like you are Pearl, so whatever you think the character
you're already
should be
in there.
doing or portraying or whatever, and that's like where her writing credits come from. It just, I found that very interesting that she got bumped up. She also got bumped up to a producer as well, or executive producer or some type of producer, which is very interesting. Not uncommon. That happens a lot when people like portray a character over multiple times. But anyway, enough rambling about behind the scenes random things that we can only speculate on. Pearl tells the story of the titular Pearl, who is living on a farm with her parents in 1918 while World War I is happening and the Spanish influenza has basically ravaged the world. For anybody who has no idea what the Spanish influenza is, think COVID, but 1,000 times worse. If you want to cry about having vaccine mandates, well, guess what? In 1918 America, there were vaccine mandates for the Spanish influenza. So,
and they also had to wear masks.
It's happened before. We don't. Yeah, we don't need to make a political statement.
No, but
the point is just you're dumb. It's happened before. So Pearl lives on this farm with her parents, who are German immigrants, which is very interesting. That's a bit of character development that we did not know from beforehand. So obviously Germany is like the bad guy of both world wars, basically, or at least one of them. And so that's a thing. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics and character moments in this film, similar to X, which I praised X, and a lot of people praise X, where the central cast of characters are not your typical slasher fodder, where they're not like, as much as I love Friday the 13th, outside of usually the final girl and maybe one or two side characters, sort of like the best friend, love interest, something like that, the characters are rather like one-dimensional. There's not really much to them. They're there to have a good time. They're there to party, to have sex, drink, whatever it might be. Like they're camp counselors. That's quite literally it. They're all dead. I could name maybe like two characters, not counting Crazy Ralph, but from the original Friday the 13th, out of the counselors, there's like two I could name.
Yeah.
There's I'm pretty sure it's Chris Christie, who's opening the camp back up, and then there's Alice, who's the final girl.
Mm-hmm.
The other people, no idea. Friday the 13th 2, I don't even remember the main girl's name. I almost want to say it starts with a G, but I don't remember. But there's Paul, who literally vanishes from the film. No idea if he's even killed or what. He just disappears. And of course, Crazy Ralph again, because Crazy Ralph's great. And then so basically that's the concept. In X, all of the characters are fleshed out. They feel like real people. Mm-hmm. They all are like genuine people with like emotions, and they're complex. They're not just one note. And that goes for Howard and Pearl and Maxine and Wayne, and every single one of the characters has kind of layers to them and moments. They have
their own story.
And everything. Pearl does similar, but some of the side characters definitely get lesser time to shine, because this movie is very much Pearl's movie. It's very much a character-driven plot, character-driven story. It's all because of her. It's all about her, and everybody else is sort of incidental. Mm-hmm. I mentioned this in Ghost's Discord when I said that we were going to see it, because he specifically asked, he was like, the first movie was like kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What's this one supposed to be? And I said that it's supposed to be where X is like porn revolution, slasher film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of aesthetic. This film, being in 1918, being on a farm, a young girl on a farm who thinks that there's something greater out there than what she has, is very much, it's Golden Age Hollywood or Wizard of Oz, but I felt like it was going to have aspects of like Psycho to it, right, from the trailers and stuff. And I'm glad to say, like, I think I quite literally nailed that dead on. It's a much more subdued movie. It's not... Well, some of the kills are even more brutal than what we saw in X. Mm-hmm. It's a much more subdued movie. Um, it starts off. X isn't a particularly like bright or colorful movie. It's a very
It's got a very monochromatic 70s
a lot of it
feel.
takes place sort of at night, so it's a little bit darker. Basically, what you'd expect from a slasher. I'm trying not to spoil anything with X because X is still a relatively new movie. So, it's got these darker tones. Color does play a little bit into it at times, where there's like red and all this stuff and whatever. Pearl is vibrant. It's very bright. Pearl is she's young, and she feels that she's a star and that has more to offer the world than just being stuck on this farm with her parents. And when she's inside the house with her parents, the colors are actually kind of muted because her father's dealing with the effects from Spanish influenza. So he's basically like a vegetable, more or less. Her mother is very much like, you have to be here, you have to help me, you're not special, nothing's gonna change. So it's like the color palette inside the house or around the parents is kind of more muted. But when she's outside, like experiencing the world or doing things with the animals or on the farm, it's super bright colors. I even pointed out that her wardrobe at some point, she's got like this little like overalls that she wears with sort of a blue shirt, and the way her hair is done is very reminiscent of like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Her I'm gonna be a star is basically her equivalent of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like, I feel trapped on this farm, but I can offer something greater to the world, or I want to experience the world. And then you even pointed out there's moments where she quite literally looks like the teacher who is represented in The Wizard of Oz as the Wicked Witch of the West, but the teacher on the bicycle, those old school bicycles that had the little like bookcase mount on the back, and she's got like a hat. She quite literally looks
She's got
like
a dress with puffy sleeves.
It's very much like
it looks just
you
like
can tell where its inspirations are, and it's awesome. It's so cool to see when you can piece those things together. And then you get side characters here who don't play, again, because it's a character driven story, this one, versus like an ensemble kind of cast of characters. But the side characters you do get are still they still have like kind of layers to them. They're not as detailed or as complex as the characters in X necessarily are, but there's like the guy who runs the projection booth at the movie theater that she meets, and he's like oh, I'm a bohemian, I just kind of, I go where I want, I live where I want, I live in the moment, or something, that she's like, I want that life kind of thing. And then there's the sister-in-law who has similar dreams of like bigger aspirations and stuff and all this thing. And then there's like her parents, who one of them is quite literally basically a vegetable, can't do anything, and her mother who's very strict and whatever. And all of this, most of this ties back into X in such a way that, again, I feel like if you haven't seen X, you can't appreciate it as much, because X has a duality to it between two of the characters, and that's kind of like the central part of X, is these two characters and this duality kind of between them, which even on a second viewing is just so good, and there's so many more small things you can pick up and appreciate. And Pearl just really kind of expands on just why, like, if you didn't quite, I guess, understand Pearl's character in X and all of the like little subtle things and the things that she was saying and her I guess as a killer in that movie, Pearl does a good job of kind of expanding on that. I don't know that it's like 100% necessarily needed, but it does do a good job of kind of showing you her younger and her sort of turn to what we later on see, which is where I kind of thought, like, that's kind of how Psycho is. Like, you're introduced to Norman, and he's like this aloof, nice, helpful guy at the hotel who's got this like crazy dark secret where even in his brain by the end of it he's like, oh well, she wouldn't even hurt a fly, and he gives that like evil smirk, and you're like, wow, this guy is like super brain broken,
Right.
And doesn't even seem to fully understand like what exactly he's doing. Now Pearl isn't an exact carbon copy of this character, but I'm just saying there's like very much inspiration you can kind of draw from that and kind of pick, understand some of it. The characters wrote to be a bit more complex, and I still think it does a really good job. Again, I was very surprised at how different this movie felt completely. Like, it's, again, if you had no idea these two films were related in any sort of way, you could definitely show these movies to somebody and they would, outside of maybe the fact that there's a character named Pearl in both of them and the setting, you could probably convince somebody these movies are not related.
I could see it.
All right, you go. I talked forever. Your turn.
I mean, I think the same in just about everything that you said. I love that it really does pull from the Wizard of Oz and the Golden Hollywood era. I love that even the poster for it just looks like something from back then, and it's just like colorful and just bright for its time. And it is really interesting to see how Pearl kind of goes from point A to point B in her thought process and the way that her brain is working. They really let you know how the wheels are turning in her brain. So they don't really leave it up to interpretation. You kind of get that confirmation, which is great. And it was really interesting too, knowing how the pacing of X went, to see it go the same direction for this as well, from beginning to end, like from the way that the opening is and all of that. I liked it. I was really scared that there was going to be just nonstop gore, but they did a really good job again of balancing things out. So that was there are still like a couple jump scares.
Pearl has a much more violent moment in it than anything in X. And X has a pretty, there's one kill in particular in X that's pretty gruesome. But Pearl has, while the I don't know how to say it, there's a part in X that is more graphic than anything we saw in it. Or a part in Pearl that's more graphic than anything we saw in X. And like it was, again, it's sort of like that weird duality, or sort of like the change, like you said. It's very bright and vibrant in the beginning, and then it becomes just dark.
Everybody gasped in the theater.
Yeah, it was. I did not expect that.
And yeah, there were a couple things that just take you from like, oh, kind of a sympathetic moment to Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. Like that line?
Yeah. Jesus Christ. But I really enjoyed it. I loved the music in it. Was really matched well for the time period.
Wee Maria.
Wee Maria.
Or is it Marie?
Might be Marie. Might be Marie.
But
she just, as an actress, she's got, I don't know how old she is in real life, but
she's probably young. She
has got some range. Like, it is impressive.
She is either 28 or 29. They just said she was born in 1993. They don't have a specific date on here, so I don't know.
Thank you, Ghost. Thank you. But yeah, for someone at her age, she has got some incredible range, where you can see her go from happy-go-lucky, most innocent girl in the world to she is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Like, her facial expressions alone.
The final shot in the movie is kind of unnerving.
It is so unnerving.
and I would love to see a behind the scenes. Again, I want to see a behind the scenes thing for it because it's so interesting. But like I said, it very much, especially by the end, we did walk out and I was like, I'm glad I picked up like from the trailer that this was giving off like Psycho vibes,
Right.
because it very much feels heavily influenced on that, which could be, even though it's not taking place in like the 60s. I don't know what year or time frame Psycho is supposed to take place. The film came out in the 60s, so I always assumed it was like a contemporary time.
And Psycho is just probably one of my absolute all-time favorite movies. So to like see these little like nods and pulls from it was just so satisfying to me. And yeah, I thought it was really good. I did close my eyes a couple times. Or I kind of did that thing where I just kind of like, I'm watching it through my peripheral, so it's not quite as bad. But yeah, it was great. And the costumes were really cool. They were really well done. And the some of these shots that they did, like we talked about the shot where she looks like the Wicked Witch of the West Lady on her bicycle, and all it is just this big panoramic shot of just a cornfield of her just do 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 do. It was just so cool to see. The way that it was done was really neat. So
I will say there are parts of it that don't 100% work for me. There's this one weird scene, we talked about this, where you were confused why it happened. It's maybe like 2 minutes, if even that, in the movie. But there's this weird moment where something happens, and it doesn't seem like there's any real reason why it does, like, or anything. It feels like it's setting something up, and then it like happens immediately, and you're just like, well, what exactly was the point of that? It didn't really make sense.
For what?
There's a great monologue in the movie that's maybe like 3 minutes long. It looks to be completely uncut, straight monologue, which is fantastic. Mia Goth does amazing in this film. She also did great in X, but she's really, really good in this one. I do feel like it kind of is off to a slower start than X did. Obviously, you got to have like setup and stuff for your characters and get them in situations and place. Pearl definitely feels like a much slower build, which, might not bother some people. It might bother others. I found the beginning to it a little boring. But it does quickly kind of pick up and kind of do things. I also don't feel like the conclusion is... It feels like it stops at a weird point when the film ends, because something happens and you're just kind of like, wait, that's it? They're not going to like explain, like there's not like a next 5-10 minutes to sort of explain this.
That would have been nice.
Because it's a weird jump between, again, without trying to spoil anything, the way it ends, there's a weird moment that's just kind of like, so like what happens between that and this and where X picks up? Like, it feels almost like there's some sort of disconnect, like, or a thread that's just missing to really like round it out and end it. So I don't know. What do you think? What are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I liked it. I absolutely love X more. Still really, really good. I'm such a fan of X. I don't know. I think I would give this...
What did you give X?
I think I gave X a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. That's what I thought.
I don't know. I think maybe a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 pitchforks.
You got to pick one. 7.5 or 8. Put you on the spot.
I'll go...
There's no eyeball stuff.
No, there wasn't.
No clowns.
No clowns.
There was a clown in Clerks, but only the View Askew logo is apparently a clown, which I didn't know.
I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Just because I really like the references to older movies. And she was very disturbing and unnerving.
So my final thoughts would be: I think Mia Goth is great. I think the movie is good. I think tonally, the shift and difference between X and Pearl is actually like fantastic. It's a good way to kind of keep the series, since we know it's a trilogy, at least keep each edition of the trilogy feeling fresh and different. So the more like vibrant colors, the more bright, sort of cheerful feeling to it, and then the like Psycho-esque vibes is very welcome to be different tonally from X. I don't like it as much as X, but I think mostly that comes down to those few things that I said. I feel like it's paced not as well. It's a much slower burn, which is probably intentional, I guess. Again, to kind of go with like the Psycho vibes and kind of build up this like dream-esque Wizard of Oz type Dorothy wants to escape sort of vibes. But it's a bit too slow in the start for me, and then the ending doesn't feel like as wrapped up as it should be.
Yeah.
I do want to see it again. And again, I also think you do lose something, because if you tried to watch this without X, you're going to miss so much. It's very much a movie that you have to see after seeing X to fully be informed on like what's going on or what the character, all that sort of stuff. And I don't think you could watch it Pearl and then X, right, even though chronologically that's the way that would go. You should always be X and then Pearl. Yeah. Which isn't necessarily like a bad thing, but there's always going to be those situations where people are going to come to it for the first time ever and think that they should watch it in that order because chronologically that's the way it goes. And then you'd like miss out on half of it. So it's, it's whatever. But I do agree. I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
So Clerks 3 from us, if you combined our scores, is a 9.5 out of 10. And Pearl is a flat 8 out of 10. So Pearl, we didn't think was as good as X or as tight as X, basically. But I still think it's good. I still think it's worth seeing. If you really enjoyed X, or if you're a big fan of X like we were, I think it's worth going to see in theaters. But it's also something that, like you should watch X before seeing it. So, like we did, I would suggest if you plan on seeing Pearl in theaters, watch X again so that it's fresh on your mind, so that everything is like there in your brain when you go see Pearl, because it's a much more rewarding experience having rewatched X right before, because then I could pick up on all the dialogue, all of the symmetry between Pearl and Maxine and stuff, and all that sort of stuff that just kind of adds to the experience that you miss without seeing it. So there you go. We like both of the movies. I think we suggest both of the movies. We're going to sign off quickly because we actually have another movie we're going to see in about an hour and a half. We're going to go see The Woman King, starring Viola Davis, and John Boyega's in it, and I'm sure some other people. And then, celebrate the rest of Maggie's birthday night, and then do more stuff tomorrow. So there will be a review of The Woman King. I'll probably put that up tomorrow. You can always find that on Facebook, Instagram, those places. And then Saturday we're seeing See How They Run, which I learned is somehow tied to an Agatha Christie play. The longest running play, off-Broadway play or something. Apparently Agatha Christie, what I read was, she sold the rights to this play called The Mousetrap while it was still playing in a theater. But her stipulation was, you cannot make an adaptation of this play until it has not been on Broadway or on stage or whatever for 6 months. Since then, it played nonstop for decades until 2019 or 2020 when COVID shut them down. That's the first time that play ever stopped playing.
Wait.
and then they started back up in 2021 again. So somehow this is tied to that play or is inspired by it or something. I don't think it's a direct adaptation, but that's an interesting thing, a twisty Agatha Christie murder mystery plot thing.
Why are you pushing away from me?
Anyway, Max is here to sign off, like always.
Say bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for coming by. Maggie loved all of her gifts.
I did.
Don't let her tell you otherwise. And
Thank you for all the happy birthday wishes.
go see those movies in theaters. I would suggest seeing both of them. Clerks a little bit more than Pearl. But you know what? I actually did want to say this. I think it's hilarious that we saw and are reviewing both of these films because both of them are, at their core, movies that they're character-driven stories. Like they're very personal stories. There you go. Because Pearl is all about Pearl, her life, her struggles, all that, whatever. And Clerks is it's Dante and Randall's final hurrah, as it were, with the end of the Clerks trilogy, and it's very like the movie is completely on their shoulders, so it failed or succeeded based on that, and yeah, there you go.
Great.
Clerks is in my top 10 of the year. It's currently sitting at number 7. I almost put it a little higher than that, but I couldn't. And then Pearl just misses out being in the top 10. It is in 11th place, right behind Top Gun Maverick, because Top Gun Maverick is just probably, it's up there as one of the most fun movies of the year. Like, if you were just saying fun, period,
Yeah.
I think it's like, if I said fun, period, it's probably RRR and then Top Gun Maverick.
For
Because
sure.
both those movies are hella fun.
Love RRR.
But yeah, so there you go. Thanks, everybody, for coming by.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next week. What is next week's movie?
Is next week Darling?
Next week, I think you're right. Next week, we'll be reviewing the new Olivia Wilde directed film starring Florence Pugh and a bunch of other people, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, called Don't Worry, Darling.
Very excited for that.
Looks very, very, very interesting. So,
Looks twisty.
it does look twisty. And then in 2 weeks' time, will either be Smile or Bros or Blonde or The Munsters, because the Munsters movie is coming out in theaters, or if no, I don't think it is. It's coming, basically it's just coming to Netflix. So I have zero expectations for that Rob Zombie thing, but who knows, we'll see. Anyway, thank you again, everybody. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Game over.